Hey friends, Hank here, with some help today, and we're going to check out some simple techniques that you can use when you're painting up your World War II German infantry figures in your standard Heer uniform. Now, I always say in this hobby, don't rush, right? Take your time, but sometimes it can be nice to take on a simple little one-sitting project, or maybe you need to knock out a whole bunch of figures for an upcoming diorama, and you don't want to spend a whole ton of time doing it. So follow these simple little tips and you'll be able to recreate some high quality, authentic Wehrmacht uniforms in no time at all. So first things first, we're going to need some figures. We're going to demonstrate today on a couple of figures from these lovely little Tamiya sets, but these tips will work for any regular Wehrmacht figures you've got at home. Alright Raj, what do you say we get over to the bench, huh? Let's do it. Now there are two different ways to approach figure painting as I see it. Some folks like to paint their figures completely built up, and some folks like to paint their figures in sections. It's really a preference thing, so we'll check out both approaches so you can pick the one that works best for you. With either method, though, we're going to start by priming all of our parts with some Dunkelgrau primer, and this will give us a nice base to work up from. For our full figure, of course, this primes everything at once. And for our pieces figure, we'll call them, we're going to prime up the head, the body, the helmet, and the weapon separately. Once everything's primed, we can move on to our base uniform color. These guys are both wearing the standard field gray uniform, so we're going to load up our airbrush with some German field gray, and we're going to spray that all over our figures. For our full figure, just hit the whole thing. Don't worry about spraying over head or hands, just hit it all. And for our pieces figure, only worry about spraying the body. We're going to come back for the head momentarily. Once our main field gray is on our uniforms, let's start painting up our flesh tones. Now with our pieces figure, this is easy. Since we have just a head separated from our body, we can still pretty easily paint this up with our airbrush. So let's load up our brush with some flat flesh and spray that on there. And to add a little bit of depth to our face sculpt, we're going to next load up our airbrush with some basic skin tone and spray that at a top-down angle over our face. This will help highlight the raised portions of the face and add a little bit of variety to our flesh. Simple highlighting work here, nothing crazy. And finally, we can dot in a couple of little eyes here using whatever color you'd like. No whites, just those tiny little dots. And boom, done. Easy airbrushed face. For our other figure, the fully assembled one, we can't just airbrush in our face because we'd be spraying over all that uniform we just painted up. So we're going to load up our brush with some of that same flat flesh color and just paint in our first skin tone on our head and our hands. Just like before, we're going to dot in a couple of eyes here. And then using our basic skin tone, that same highlight we used on our other figure, we're going to just carefully pull out some of the raised portions of our face and our hands to add a little accentuation to those areas. Once again, nothing too complex here. And if you want to add a little bit of hair, you can do that as well. Totally up to you. Alright, with our skin work done, we can move back to all of our figure's equipment and field gear. General rule of thumb, I like to start with the objects that are the closest to the body and work out. That way, you can paint the harder to reach gear first, and then easily clean up any accidental overpainting on the more accessible parts later. Let's start with our bread bag. This is just a khaki bag that's on that back hip here. Our canteen will usually be sitting right on top of the bread bag, and that's going to be a German camo medium brown on the bottom, on the body of the canteen, and then the top portion will remain in our field gray, just like the uniform. One of our figures has a mess tin right here, and this will be painted up in our field gray as well, so we can just clean that up a little bit if there's any overpainting. The cylindrical gas mask case that is worn on the back here as well, as you guessed it, is also field gray. Whole lot of field gray here. So simple stuff, and it makes a pretty good beginner-friendly figure. Both of these NCOs are armed with the MP40, so they've both got MP40 magazine pouches. These will be painted up in German camo beige. And the closing straps on these pouches can be painted in black, in red leather, in brown, whatever you think looks good. A little artistic liberty here. One of our figures also has a map case, and we can paint that up in some red leather. Nice little pop of color there. Okay, at this stage, let's start painting up our belt and Y straps. We're going to be using flat black for our next few items here. Now, one of these figures is wearing a Y-strap suspender system, one is not, but this will go up in a single strap in the back and down in the front with 2 straps, and these all connect to our belt. One of our soldiers has a bayonet. The frog and handle can both be painted up in black as well. We can also use our black to pencil in the straps securing our other field gear, namely our canteen and our mess kit. And of course, our boots will be painted up in black as well. Any other webbing or straps on your figure can be painted up in camo beige or in khaki. Both those colors work well. And for a final bit on our uniforms, we can accentuate our snaps and buckles with a little bit of white aluminum just to pop those details. Alright, for our MP40s, the main body of the SMG will be in black. For our figure that we're painting in pieces, that's quite easy to do. And for our fully assembled figure, we just need to use a little bit of careful brushwork to get the job done there. Keep in mind as you go, the grips on the MP40 were made of a resin Bakelite material, so those components are usually a slightly different color from the main body of the weapon. Sometimes they're more brown, sometimes a little more gray. For our separate MP40, we're going to leave these components in our Dunkelgrau primer color. And for our assembled figure, we're just going to accent the grip with a nice deep rust brown. A little bit of variety there. And for an extra little touch, a quick bit of dry brushed aluminum can help really accentuate the metal portions of the MP40. Alright, awesome. At this stage, it's time to move on to our finishing steps. Let's spray everything with a coat of gloss varnish to protect our work so far. Once that's fully cured, it's time to assemble our pieces figure. We can do this with just a little bit of super glue, and we can get all those components together. Mind you, the helmet that we primed earlier in Dunkelgrau can just remain Dunkelgrau. That's perfect. Now, the reason I don't always love the assemble later approach is because sometimes it can be a little tricky to get everything into place without damaging your paintwork. For this guy, for example, I scuffed his cheek a little bit, squeezing the MP40 in there. It's not a big deal. We can go back and clean it up with some fresh paint, but just something to keep in mind. Now, I really like these Tamiya figures because they come with some great decals to add an extra element of realism to the figure. At this stage, if you do have decals with whatever figure you're working on, you can get those all applied just like you would on a regular model kit. And once any decals have dried completely, we can spray our figure with another coat of gloss varnish to protect those decals and prepare us for just a spot of weathering. We're going to do a super simple weathering procedure here. We're just going to do a light pin wash to accentuate our details using some Flory clay-based wash. I like to dot just a few areas with some of the wash, less is more here, and then we're going to come back with some tap water and help that wash flow into all the recessed areas of our sculpt. This creates some lovely natural shadow effects and a little bit of grime on our uniforms. We can't have things looking too clean here. Okay, once we're happy with our weathering work, all that's left to do is spray the figure with some matte varnish and we'll be good to go. And there we are, quick, easy Wehrmacht infantry figures. I knocked these guys out in just a few hours, including breaks, and now I've got a couple of great little figures to add to my collection. I hope that was helpful for you guys. If you did enjoy the video and you'd like to check out some more scale modeling tutorials, I'll link to a few of my favorites right here. And until next time, my friends, be well, happy building, cheers.